The city of Chicago wore winter like a tailored suit, sharp, expensive, and unforgiving. Wind cut through the glass canyons downtown, slid between black sedans, and slapped against the river like it had something personal to prove. People hurried with collars up and heads down, pretending they didn't see the power that moved around them every day. Quick pause, if you're enjoying this story. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. Let's continue. Dominic Vail didn't pretend. He owned too much of this city to bother with illusions. To the public, Dominic Vail was a billionaire magnate, chairman of Vail Maritime Holdings, a global shipping empire with terminals on 3 continents and a portfolio that reached into luxury real estate, private logistics, and high-end hospitality. The business magazines printed his net worth like a score. The evening news called him private and intense, never realizing those words were polite disguises for what he actually was. In the shadows, Dominic ran something older than money. A network of men who didn't wear uniforms, didn't file reports, didn't miss. A system that moved like a bloodstream beneath the city's skin, quiet, efficient, and ruthless. Deals were sealed with signatures in daylight and enforced with consequences at night. Dominic didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His name was enough. That was why even his rare moments of normalcy came wrapped in protection. On this afternoon, his security detail moved at a respectful distance as he walked alone through Grant Park. No overcoats with bulges, no earpieces flashing in the open. Just well-dressed men who blended into crowds and watched reflections in windows like they were reading the future. Dominic's hands were in his coat pockets. The cold didn't bother him. He'd lived through colder. He had come here because something in him had been restless for days, an itch he couldn't scratch with money, violence, or control. And when Dominic couldn't control something, he hunted it down until it stopped being a mystery. The truth was, he had been seeing the past in strange places lately. In the way a woman laughed outside a cafe. In the tone of a song slipping from a passing car. In the scent of a perfume that didn't belong in his world. It was annoying. It was dangerous. It was human. His phone vibrated once, a short notification from his head of security. All clear. Dominic didn't respond. He kept walking until he reached the quieter stretch where the trees stood bare like skeletons and the benches were mostly empty. That was when he saw her. It wasn't dramatic at first. There was no lightning. No music cue. Just a woman sitting on a bench with a paper cup in her hands, shoulders slightly hunched against the wind. Her hair was darker than he remembered, pulled back in a practical knot. Her coat was worn, not poor but lived in, the kind of fabric that had survived too many seasons because it had to. He would have kept walking if not for the way she tilted her head. Something in that movement struck him like a forgotten language. Dominic slowed without meaning to. His gaze narrowed, not with desire, not with nostalgia. Dominic didn't indulge either, but with the instinct of a man trained to recognize threats and patterns. He knew her. The name came back first, sharp as a blade sliding from its sheath. Elena Marlowe. She had worked for him once, before the Empire's front-facing brands had become polished and corporate, back when Dominic still personally handled a few of his public businesses. She'd been a server at the Gilded Thorn, one of his private dining clubs hidden behind a respectable storefront. A place where politicians, financiers, and certain kinds of criminals ate expensive food and made quiet promises. Elena had never belonged there. She moved like someone trying not to take up space. She didn't flirt for tips or laugh too loud. She kept her eyes low, but not in fear, more like she was guarding something. Then one day she had disappeared. Not fired. Not replaced. Just gone. No goodbye. No complaint. No request for money. Dominic remembered because it had been strange. People didn't walk away from his world cleanly. And Elena had left behind a final paycheck she never collected, as if she'd been running, not quitting. Dominic had asked questions. His men found nothing. And Dominic, busy with wars and mergers and blood he couldn't wash off his hands, eventually let the mystery sink under everything else. Until now. Elena's face had changed subtly with time, softer in some places, harder in others. But those eyes were the same. Dark, focused, determined. Eyes that had looked at him once like she was trying to decide if he was a monster or a man. Dominic stopped several feet away. He didn't speak immediately. He watched. Then he saw the children. 2 small figures on either side of her. Bundled in winter coats, their legs swinging above the ground, their boots not quite reaching. One was holding a small toy car, turning it slowly like he was studying how it worked. The other was looking around with alert curiosity, scanning faces the way Dominic's men did. Twins. Dominic's lungs tightened. Not because of sentiment. He didn't do sentiment. Not because of surprise. Dominic had learned to expect almost anything. It was because the boy on the left, no, the one on Elena's right, turned his head just enough for Dominic to see his face fully. And Dominic's body went still. The child had his eyes. Not just the color. The shape. The calm, dangerous stillness behind them. The kind of eyes that belonged to people who noticed too much and trusted too little. Then the second twin smiled at something Elena said, dimples forming at the corners of his mouth. Dominic felt the ground shift under him. Dimples. His mother used to tease him about those dimples when he was a child, before she died. Said they ran in the family like a curse, proof that the men who carried them were born charming enough to disarm you before they destroyed you. Dominic stared as if staring harder could change reality. Elena sensed him. She looked up, and her expression tightened instantly. The warmth drained from her face the way light disappears when a door closes. For a second, they just looked at each other. Dominic didn't smile. Elena didn't either. There was no greeting, no easy recognition. Only tension, old and sharp, stretched between them like wire. Elena's hands moved, subtle, fast, protective. One hand touched the shoulder of the nearest twin, guiding him closer. The other shifted her cup aside as if she might need both hands free. Dominic recognized those movements too. Someone who had been afraid before. Someone who expected danger. Dominic stepped closer, slow enough not to spook her, but not hesitant. He didn't do hesitant. "Elena Marlowe," he said, voice low, controlled. Her jaw tightened. "Mr. Vale, you disappeared. I left. You left without a word." Elena looked away, briefly, toward the twins. Her eyes softened for half a heartbeat, then hardened again like she was locking something in a safe. Dominic followed her gaze. "They're yours." "They're mine," she corrected immediately, sharp enough to cut. That answer, that exact phrasing, fed a cold fire in Dominic's chest. He didn't ask if they were his. He didn't need to. Dominic had built empires by reading truth in people's posture, in their breathing, in what they refused to say. Elena's refusal was loud. Dominic crouched slightly, just enough to bring his gaze closer to the twin's level without looking weak. The twin with the toy car stared back at him with unsettling calm. Dominic felt something unfamiliar move through him, an instinct that wasn't strategic. Possession. Protection. Legacy. Elena noticed his focus and shifted in front of the twins slightly, blocking part of them with her body. Dominic straightened. "How old are they?" Elena's throat moved as she swallowed. "Old enough." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "You think you can sit here in my city with my blood and tell me nothing?" That was the moment Elena's control cracked, just slightly. Her eyes flashed. "Your city," she repeated, disbelief edged with anger. "You really can't hear yourself, can you?" Dominic leaned in a fraction. "Tell me the truth." Elena's hands clenched around her cup until her knuckles whitened. For a second, Dominic thought she might stand up and walk away. Then she spoke, voice quiet, lethal. "The truth is, I left because your world kills everything it touches." Dominic's expression didn't change, but something in his chest tightened again. Elena took a breath, then looked him dead in the eye. "And I was pregnant when I ran." The wind howled through the trees, but Dominic heard only that sentence, each word landing like a bullet he couldn't dodge. His empire. His enemies. His sins. And now, sitting on a bench in the open air, 2 small lives that carried his face like a secret. Dominic Vale didn't lose control. But for the first time in years, he felt it slipping. Not because someone threatened him. Because something inside him had just become a target. And targets in Dominic's world didn't stay safe for long. Dominic Vale did not sit down. He stood there in the cold, coat unmoved by the wind, face carved from discipline, while the sentence "I was pregnant when I ran" echoed again and again in his head like a gunshot trapped in a tunnel. Elena watched him carefully. She had learned long ago how to read men, especially powerful ones. She expected anger, denial, demands. Dominic gave her none of that. He simply looked at the twins again. Not openly, not greedily, just enough to confirm what his instincts had already screamed at him. The way the quieter twin tracked movement. The way the other leaned slightly forward, unafraid, curious. They were observant, controlled, not spoiled, not soft. They were being raised carefully. That both relieved and unsettled him. "How long?" Dominic asked. Elena hesitated. Then, reluctantly, 6 years. 6 years. Dominic exhaled slowly through his nose. 6 years of birthdays he hadn't attended. 6 years of first steps, first words, scraped knees, late-night fevers. 6 years of enemies he had crushed without knowing they might one day look for leverage in the wrong places. "You didn't tell me," he said. Elena's lips pressed together. "You didn't give me a reason to." Dominic's eyes flicked to her. "That's not fair." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Neither was your life." The twins sensed the tension now. The one with the toy car leaned closer to Elena, pressing his shoulder into her side. The other watched Dominic intently, head tilted slightly, like he was studying a puzzle. Dominic noticed. "What are their names?" he asked. Elena stiffened. "You don't get to." "Names," Dominic repeated calmly. "I'm not asking for custody. I'm asking for respect." She searched his face, perhaps looking for mockery, perhaps for threat. "Finding neither," she answered. "Lucas," she said, nodding toward the quiet twin. "And Noah." Dominic repeated the names silently. Lucas, Noah. They fit. Elena shifted, preparing to stand. "This conversation is over." Dominic's voice dropped. "No, it isn't." Her eyes snapped back to him. "I protected them. I did exactly what you never could." "You hid them," he cut in. "There's a difference. And they're alive because of it." That landed. Dominic glanced around the park, not nervously, but strategically. 2 joggers passed at a distance. A dog barked somewhere. His men were still positioned where he'd left them, blending into the city like shadows sewn into concrete. "You think I don't understand why you ran?" he asked quietly. "I know what my world does to people." "Then why are you still in it?" Elena shot back. "Because leaving would burn everything down," he almost said. "Because monsters don't get retirement." Instead, he said, "Because if I wasn't, someone worse would be." Elena shook her head. "That's the lie men like you tell yourselves so you can sleep." Dominic leaned closer, voice low enough that only she could hear. "And this is the lie women like you tell so you can pretend you're safe." Her breath caught. "You think you disappeared," Dominic continued. "You think you hid them from me. But that's not the same as hiding them from my enemies." Elena's blood ran cold. "I was careful." "I don't doubt that," he said. "But careful doesn't beat inevitable." She stood abruptly, placing herself fully between him and the twins. "Stay away from us." Dominic straightened, all warmth gone now, replaced by something colder and far more dangerous. "I can't," he said simply. "And neither can you." Lucas tugged at Elena's coat. "Mom." She forced a smile instantly, smoothing his hair. "It's okay, baby." Dominic watched the way her entire body softened for them. He had never seen that version of her, not when she worked for him, not when she'd stood in his office years ago with her resignation letter shaking in her hand. That was when it hit him fully. She had done this alone. Not because she wanted to be brave. Because she had to be. "You should come with me," Dominic said. Elena froze. "No." "To a secure location," he clarified. "Temporary." I said no. You don't know who's watching, he pressed. You don't know how fast rumors move once bloodlines are exposed. Her voice rose slightly. You think dragging us into your fortress makes us safer? Your enemies don't hunt in parks, Dominic. They hunt where you live. That's exactly why I can defend you there. Elena shook her head. You don't get to rewrite 6 years of silence with one demand. Dominic's jaw tightened. This isn't about us. It never is with men like you. The twins exchanged a glance, silent communication that made Dominic's chest ache. They were already reading people. Already learning survival. Elena grabbed their gloves, moving quickly now. We're leaving. Dominic stepped aside to let them pass, but not before speaking again. I'll find you, he said. Elena stopped mid-step. Don't. That's not a threat, he added. It's a fact. She turned slowly. If you come near my children. Our children, he corrected. The word hung between them like smoke. Elena's eyes burned. If you come near them without my consent, I will disappear again. And next time, you won't even know what city to burn down looking for us. Dominic studied her. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Fair, he said. She didn't trust that answer, but she didn't have time to argue. She took the twins' hands and walked away, shoulders tense, every step measured. Dominic stayed where he was until they vanished into the crowd. Only then did he lift his hand slightly. Instantly, his head of security appeared at his side. You saw them, Dominic said. Yes. No tails. No tracking. Not today. The man hesitated. Sir. I said not today. The order stood. That night, Dominic didn't return to his penthouse overlooking the lake. He went underground, to the place where decisions were made without witnesses. A reinforced room. Stone walls. One long table. His lieutenants gathered, sensing the shift in gravity before he spoke. There's a vulnerability, Dominic said. That word alone made men straighten. My bloodline, he continued. Hidden. Exposed today. Silence fell. We don't move yet, Dominic said. But if anyone breathes a word about heirs, if even a whisper reaches the wrong ears, I want to know who, when, and why. And the woman? One man asked carefully. Dominic's gaze turned lethal. Untouchable. The men nodded. No one questioned him. Later, alone, Dominic stood by a window deep beneath the city, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time, he didn't see a king. He saw a father who had entered the game too late. And in his world, late decisions were paid for in blood. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay on the narrow bed of her apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling while the city hummed below like a restless animal. Every sound made her tense, the distant siren, the elevator cables groaning, footsteps in the hall that didn't slow fast enough. Grant Park replayed in her mind on a loop. Dominic Vale's face when she told him the truth. Not rage. Not disbelief. Calculation. That terrified her more than anger ever could. Lucas and Noah slept curled on either side of her, their breathing steady, unaware that the world had shifted under their feet. Elena listened to it like a prayer. 6 years she had kept them invisible. 6 years of moving apartments, changing routines, avoiding patterns. No photos online. No schools with donor lists or glossy brochures. No doctors who asked too many questions. She had learned to live small on purpose. Dominic lived large by design. At dawn, Elena made a decision she'd hoped she'd never have to make again. She packed. Not everything, only what mattered. Documents hidden inside old books. Emergency cash taped beneath a drawer. Phones wiped clean and replaced with older backups. By the time the twins woke up, she was calm, smiling, making pancakes like it was any other morning. Are we going on a trip? Noah asked, syrup already on his chin. Maybe, Elena said lightly. A short one. Lucas watched her more closely. Did that man scare you? Elena paused, then crouched to his level. No, sweetheart. But he reminded me it's time to be careful again. Lucas nodded, satisfied with the answer. Too satisfied. That worried her. She walked them to school herself, ignoring the cold, scanning reflections in storefront windows. No black sedans. No unfamiliar faces lingering too long. Still, the city felt tighter, like it was closing around her. She didn't know that Dominic had kept his word. For now. Dominic Vale watched surveillance footage in silence. Not of Elena. Of threats. Screens lined the walls, ports, offices, meeting rooms, streets where his name carried weight. His analysts worked quietly, feeding him data, unusual inquiries, intercepted messages, subtle shifts in alliances. Someone knew. Not everything, but enough to be dangerous. A broker in Prague mentioned heirs, one man reported carefully. No names. Just speculation. Dominic's fingers curled slowly on the arm of his chair. Shut it down. It's already being handled. Permanently, Dominic clarified. The man nodded once and disappeared from the room. Dominic stood and walked to the far wall, where a single photo hung, his parents, long dead. He stared at it longer than usual. Elena had been right about one thing. His world destroyed what it touched. That meant the only way to protect his children was to change the rules of the game. He summoned his most trusted lieutenant, Marco Ruiz, a man who had survived 3 wars and betrayed none. "I want a shadow," Dominic said. "Invisible. Not mine." Marco frowned. "Explain." "Someone to protect them without my name attached," Dominic said. "No loyalty to the organization. Loyalty bought clean." "That's risky." "So is leaving them exposed," Dominic replied. By nightfall, the shadow was in place. Elena felt it before she saw it. A sense of pressure lifting. The strange calm of danger held at bay by something unseen. She hated herself for recognizing it, because it felt like Dominic. Days passed. Then weeks. No contact. No confrontation. No ambush. Elena began to believe, foolishly, that maybe Dominic had let them go. Until Lucas came home with a bruise. "It was an accident," he said quickly when she saw it. "I fell." Elena knelt, examining it with a practiced eye. It wasn't from a fall. Her phone rang that night from a blocked number. She didn't answer. A message followed, text only. "They were followed today. I intervened. You're running out of quiet places." Her hands shook. Another message appeared seconds later. "We need to talk." She didn't need a signature. She knew who it was. They met at night, not in a park this time, but in a closed cafe Dominic owned under 3 shell companies. No customers. No staff. Just them. Elena stood, arms crossed. "You promised." "I promised not to take them," Dominic said calmly. "I didn't promise the world would stop hunting." "You put a guard on my children." "I put a shield," he corrected. She laughed bitterly. "You don't do anything without a price." Dominic's gaze softened, just barely. "The price is truth." Elena's shoulders sagged. 6 years of running had finally caught up. "What do you want?" she asked. Dominic stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I want to protect them openly. Train the wolves to fear touching what's mine. And if I say no, then I keep doing this in the dark until someone makes a mistake," he said. "And I don't like odds I can't control." Elena closed her eyes. She saw the future branching in front of her, one path of constant fear, another of dangerous safety. She opened her eyes. "You don't get to own them," she said. Dominic nodded. "Agreed. You don't get to raise them as weapons." His jaw tightened. "Agreed. And if your world ever puts them in danger, because of you, you walk away." Dominic didn't answer immediately. That silence was everything. Finally, he said, "I will move heaven and hell first." Elena exhaled shakily. She had made a deal with the devil once before. This time, it was for her children. Outside, unseen, Dominic's enemies were already making plans. And blood, once noticed, never stayed hidden for long. The first attempt came quietly. That was how Dominic knew it was serious. No explosions. No warnings. No dramatic gestures meant to send a message. Just a ripple in the system, An anomaly so subtle most men would have missed it. A delayed shipment rerouted without authorization. A false customs flag raised and withdrawn within minutes. Someone testing boundaries. Someone asking a question without speaking it aloud. Where are the heirs? Dominic stood in his underground command room, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up like a man preparing for war. Screens glowed around him, maps layered with data, names, movements. Marco Ruiz stood nearby, reading updates with a grim expression. "They're being careful," Marco said. "Too careful. This isn't a rival family. It's opportunists." Dominic nodded. "Blood attracts parasites. And vultures." Dominic's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. "Then we remind them what happens when they circle too close." But his eyes drifted, unbidden, to the live feed on the smallest screen, Elena Street. Her building entrance. Ordinary. Quiet. A life that looked fragile because it was honest. That was the problem. Dominic could crush empires. But he couldn't crush fate. The second attempt was not quiet. It came 3 nights later, just past midnight, when Elena was reading to the twins on the couch, their heads resting against her shoulders. The lights flickered once. Then the window shattered. Not fully, just enough. A precision shot, designed to scare, not kill. Elena screamed, pulling the twins down instinctively, covering them with her body as glass rained onto the floor. Before she could move again, the shadow Dominic had placed in their orbit was already there, silent, efficient, dragging her and the children into the hallway as another shot cracked through the night. Downstairs, a black sedan screeched away. Within 60 seconds, Dominic knew. Within 2 minutes, the city locked. Within 5, men were dead. Dominic arrived himself before dawn, standing in Elena's ruined living room, staring at the shattered window like it had personally offended him. His presence filled the space, heavy and absolute. Elena stood across from him, shaking, not from fear but fury. "You said you would protect them," she said. "And I did," Dominic replied quietly. "They're alive." "That was not protection," she snapped. "That was escalation." Dominic looked at the twins, now asleep in a back room under armed guard. "This was inevitable." Elena laughed harshly. "Then you lied to me." "No," he said. "I underestimated how fast they would move." Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, Dominic spoke again. "This ends now." Elena crossed her arms. "How?" "I remove them from the board," he said. Her heart skipped. "You said." "Not ownership," he finished. "Inheritance." She froze. Dominic continued, voice steady. "Tomorrow morning, I will publicly announce my retirement." Elena stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're lying." "I don't lie when it matters." "You rule half this city," she said. "You don't just retire." "I do if I want my children to live," Dominic said simply. The words hit harder than any gunshot. Elena searched his face for manipulation. Found none. Only resolve, and something else beneath it. Fear. Not for himself. For them. By sunrise, the world shook. News outlets exploded with headlines. Billionaire Dominic Vale steps down amid internal restructuring. Stock prices wobbled. Rivals panicked. Allies scrambled. Underground channels buzzed with confusion and rage. And in the chaos, Dominic moved. Assets were transferred. Shell companies dissolved. Power redistributed, not to one successor, but fragmented so thoroughly no single enemy could seize control. The throne, once singular, became a maze. Enemies hunted ghosts. By nightfall, Dominic stood at a private airstrip outside the city. Elena arrived with the twins, escorted but untouched. She looked exhausted. Older. Stronger. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet," Dominic said. "Somewhere no one will look." Lucas stared up at him. "Are you coming too?" Dominic crouched, meeting his son's eyes fully for the first time. "Yes," he said. "If you'll have me." Noah studied him, then nodded solemnly. "Okay." Elena watched, heartbreaking and mending at the same time. As the plane lifted into the dark sky, Chicago shrank beneath them, a kingdom abandoned not out of weakness, but love. Years later, stories would circulate about how Dominic Vale vanished, about how the city never quite recovered its balance, about a man who had everything and chose to walk away. But the truth lived far from headlines. In a quiet coastal town where a man taught two boys how to fish, where a woman laughed without checking shadows, where wealth existed, but power did not rule the table, Dominic still woke sometimes, expecting violence. Instead, he heard laughter. He had been a king. But what he left behind was something far rarer. A future that didn't need blood to survive.